Okie dokie. So we're going to get into our second section of notes for Chapter 2. So this is Chapter 2 Notes, Part 2, where we're going to talk about inorganic chemistry. Well, what is the difference between inorganic chemistry and organic chemistry? Well, we need both inorganic chemistry and inorganic molecules for us to function. But really the difference is carbon. So something that is organic contains carbon. So all organic substances have carbon with two exceptions. Carbon monoxide, which is right here, carbon dioxide. So they are carbon-containing substances, but they're very simple molecules. Important molecules, but simple molecules, but we consider them to be inorganic. On the whole, organic compounds are large, covalently bonded substances. And the four that we're going to talk about in this chapter are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Inorganic substances, they do not contain carbon. Again, two exceptions, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. They are typically small, simple molecules that are ionically bonded. And we have three classes of inorganic substances that we're going to talk about in this section of notes, which is water, salts, acids, and bases. So we already did that task in class, or maybe we didn't, depending upon what year this is that we are, you're watching this video. But we're first going to talk about water, okay? So water is basically the most abundant inorganic substance in their body. We're like 60% water, okay? Water is really essential for four main reasons. Why? It has a high heat capacity, it's considered the universal solvent, it's involved in chemical reactions, and we need it for some protection or cushioning in our body. So high heat capacity, what does that mean? High heat capacity with water means that it takes a lot of energy to make water change, either to increase a degree or decrease a degree. And that's a good thing because that helps keep our body at a pretty constant temperature. That makes us, warm-blooded essentially. We walk out and it's 30 below zero. We're not going to immediately turn 30 below zero. We walk out or we're, sitting in a, hot tub that might be 106 degrees. We're not going to turn 106 degrees, which would, fry your enzymes. That would be bad. So the high heat capacity of water is a good thing. Water is also known as the universal solvent. So we've talked about different parts of solutions. We've got solute and we've got solvent. Solute is what's being dissolved. Solvent is the dissolving agent. Because of water's polar nature, so its partial charges, it's very good at pulling compounds and molecules apart, okay? Water is also a pretty common transport medium inside our body by way of blood and lymph, urine, etc. Water is involved in chemical reactions. There are two main chemical reactions that involve water. One is dehydration synthesis, the other is hydrolysis. Dehydration synthesis is when we remove a molecule of water, so we take an H from one substance, an OH from another substance, and we end up synthesizing a bond. So we dehydrate it by pulling out a molecule of water to synthesize a bond. Hydrolysis reactions are the opposite. We're hydrating it, we're adding an H and an OH to break a bond. So we're hydrolysing, lyse to break. You might have heard of like a cell lysing or bursting, okay? So we're hydrating it in order to break a bond. So those are reversible reactions involved with water. So this would be showing a hydrolysis reaction. So we're having this chemical plus water right here. So we're adding H2O here, and we're breaking apart these two substances. This is showing a dehydration synthesis. So we are going to be making a bond between these two substances. Okay, by taking an H and an OH away, we're making a new bond right here. And again, these are reversible reactions. And finally, cushioning. Water is involved with protecting protecting our brain, like in cerebral spinal fluid, protecting a baby, which is amniotic fluid. So it's a shock absorber. I don't know if you ever heard of, women giving birth in water. Why? It reduces the pressure, it reduces the pain. Water has those same functions within our body. All right, so now we're going to move on to salts, our second class of inorganic substances. Salts are ionically bonded substances that have ions, so either positive cations, negative anions, other than H plus and OH. That's dealing with our third inorganic substance. Mostly we have calcium and phosphorus salts in our body, okay? In solution, which again, we're 60% water, so inside of us, salts are dissociated, or they break down, they ionize into their charged particles or ions. And because water is polar, it's really easy for water to pull apart salts and make them into ions or electrolytes inside of us, okay? So this is showing salt going into solution or water, and it ends up being pulled apart into its charged or ionized form down here. So what do we need salts for? Salts are responsible for your nervous system to function, which is kind of a big deal, all right? Sodium and potassium actually cross the plasma membranes of essentially all of your cells to allow you to be alive and responding to the nervous system. Iron, which is a charged particle of salt, is on a hemoglobin molecule, which there are actually 250 million hemoglobin molecules per every red blood cell that end up carrying oxygen. So carrying oxygen around your body by salt is pretty important. And what we call these charged particles on the inside of our body is an electrolyte. So when we're talking about electrolyte balances in their body, we're actually calling about salts. And if you have an imbalance or a lacking of a certain electrolyte in your body, it can be fatal. And then finally, our third and final class of inorganic substances are acids and bases. Acids and bases, just like salts, ionize in solution, meaning they break apart into their cations and anions. However, depending upon the strength of the acids or base will determine if they completely or incompletely ionize in solution. Our blood has a bunch of weak acids and bases in it in order to help buffer the pH of our blood to keep it that 7.35, 7.45. Acids and bases specifically deal with substances that are H plus donors or OH minus donors. So acids, they have a sour taste, and I'm going to be quite honest with you, I don't know what the difference between sour and bitter is. And I know they describe bases having a bitter taste and acids having a sour taste. I can tell you what the difference is. That sounds the same to me. But an acid is going to release H plus ions when they dissociate. They are found in the body in our gastric juice. We have hydrochloric acid. Actually, there's some acidic solution in the pH of the vagina. Your skin actually has an acid mantle to it to decrease bacteria to grow. Strong acids are going to completely ionize or break apart into their ionic and their cations and anions in solution, versus weak acids do not. So this green is showing complete ionization. So this would be a strong acid, hydrochloric acid. So it's totally going to be breaking apart. There's going to be no HCl left. This is showing an incomplete ionization where not all of the compound is going to ionize in solution. Bases. Bases, like I said, have a bitter taste. I'm not quite sure what the difference between sour and bitter is, but maybe you know better than I do. Bases give off an OH minus or a hydroxyl ion when they dissociate, and they accept protons. And just like strong acids and weak acids, strong bases completely ionize or dissociate, weak bases do not. So this is showing a complete ionization in solution. Ammonia is showing an incomplete ionization in solution. So what is the pH scale actually measuring? It's measuring the presence of hydrogen ions. So it's basically measuring, how acidic something is or how not acidic something is. And our kidneys and lungs are responsible for helping us maintain our pH. So our kidneys are really the mega contributor in terms of pH and keeping it tightly regulated, but our lungs are responsible for expelling carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide, when it accumulates inside of us, causes our blood pH to lower, to become more acidic. So it's kind of helpful to be breathing. On this pH scale, you can see we have 7 is neutral, and your blood is just slightly basic here at 7.35 to 7.45. Blood is actually very similar to salt water or ocean water, which is kind of interesting. If we look here, gastric juice. So the pH of your stomach is actually super duper low. It's really acidic. Another thing to note here on the scale is urine. Urine is pH of about 6. That's also slightly acidic. Why? Because it will decrease bacteria growing in the urinary tract, which is exposed to the outside, and it also decreases the likelihood of substances kind of accumulating together to create things like kidney stones. And that's it.